Hi students, welcome back to color mixing part 2. We're going to work on some purple and some blue. And so let's go ahead and get started. Here's a little quick overview of me going through and mixing up and putting my paint on the palette, trying to load up different colors so that we can get started. I'm putting down 2 different blues, a black, and a purple, and lots of white. So I think that's about it. Here's the swatches that I'm looking at. I think I'm going to pick the first 2 out of these and get started. So I put some water on my palette. Probably wasn't the best choice. It's a little bit too much water. But I'm going to start with purple, and I'm going to take a little bit of that and mix it with white to try and get a really nice light version. I think I tried to mix the lightest version of the purple, but I do not think I was successful by the time we get to the end and I look at the comparison between the two. Usually that lightest color on your swatch card is so light that it's really hard to get a match. So here's me testing out my colors on the card, and then if I think I'm getting close, I'm going to turn around and go ahead and start painting on top of the paper. All right, so here we go. We've got both the mixes up in the top right and me painting down in the bottom. I don't think these are perfectly synced up. It looked like they were, but I don't know if they're exactly linked up. You can see me painting just a little bit sooner than when I'm mixing. But the idea is still there. We're going through, I'm trying to mix the darker color now, grabbing a little bit of purple, mixing it in. I think at a certain point, as I start to go through and mix these, I realize that I'm using too much of the deep purple, which is the color that I have, and I don't have any red mixed into it. There's a little bit more reddish to this purple than I think I realized at first. But that's part of why we're going through and we're doing these mixes, is we're learning how to identify what we're putting down, what's the difference between what we're painting and the card, and how can we make those adjustments. So we're going to go through. I think I'm lightening it up again. So I kind of went from the light to the dark, and then I'm going to go back and try and do the whole thing again. I think I'm going to end up with a total of about 9, 4 on the top row, 5 on the bottom row, and those are just my attempts for purple. And after that, I will switch over and start doing some of the blue and try to get those matches. It's easy to get the hue family. Usually you just have to identify the major color. So is it green? Is it blue? Is it purple? Is it orange? Is it red? Is it yellow? Value is a little bit tricky, but not too hard. Just think, do I need to add white to it? Do I need to add a dark to it to make it darker? See, here I go. I'm starting to mix and put lighter versions on top of old swatches. So this is again showing you the idea that don't throw away a match or a mix if it doesn't match. You are going to paint up a whole sheet, probably 3, to try and get the 10 mixes. And if you don't get the match, it's okay. You can paint on top of that once it's dry. And sometimes painting on top of an old swatch that you've painted is what's going to give you the solution that you've been looking for. So I tried another one on top. Here's another one on top. Sometimes I'm painting on the white. Sometimes I'm painting on an old swatch that I know is not a mix. So I think I'm starting to mix a little bit of the red into this. There was me grabbing a little bit of red. To try and get a new color. Try and get the color right. A lot of times it's a little bit difficult to get, but that's what we're trying to learn. We're trying to learn how do we get close. So, kind of looking at it, I don't have any near the white or the lightest value on that card. So I think I'm going to try and add some white and see if I can get it. It's pretty difficult. You end up using a lot of white. So anytime you want to mix a very light color, start with white and then add a little bit of color to it. Don't start with the color and then add white. If you do it the second way, you're going to run out of so much paint and you're going to find yourself buying more white paint before the end of the semester. So use it sparingly, start with white, add color to it. You'll be surprised how dark colors will turn after you just add a little bit of color to it. Painting on top, trying to get that middle value. So I keep repainting on top of some of these swatches, and that's okay. If it's not a match, then I can do whatever I want with it. I can try to find a solution that's going to use a little bit of purple underneath. So I've definitely moved to my more redder version of the purple. I'm just painting that on top of the old swatches that are clearly too cool and are not working. Every once in a while, I'm testing out my color on top of the swatch. And then when I'm happy or it's close, then I'm going to go say, okay, let's paint it on the paper. Let's see if it's a match. And we'll figure it out. So I think we're just about at the end of the purple. So I'm going to switch over and we're going to start painting with the blue. Here's another view of just my palette. And we're going to go ahead and start just mixing the blue. I think I've got these synced up hopefully a little bit better. Oh, nope, they're not. I'm going to be mixing ahead of my painting. But as you look and you're taking a look at it, I've got a blue sheet. There's 3 colors. We're going to probably start for the middle color, I think, first. Nope, I'm trying to mix the lightest. What I did in between the purple and the blue is I did clean out my brush. But I think I'm going to find that I repaint nearly all of these because I go through and I probably needed to pinch even more water out of my brush. It's always a good idea to have a paper towel over to the side so you can use that to dry off your brush if your brush has too much water in it, especially if it's a big 1-inch square brush like this. It's not going to help. So you really need to keep your brush fairly dry when you're mixing your color. You can grab water if as you paint it, it's starting to feel a little bit sticky as it kind of like tacky towards the paper. But any other time, I would say dry your brush off before you paint. I'm attempting to squeeze in 10 different mixes here. Every once in a while, you'll see me kind of like scrape what's on the palette with my brush to try and get extra paint. That's a good way to get a little more paint down. A lot of time when I'm painting this, notice that I pull the brush, my hand is more horizontal to the paper than perpendicular and up and down to the paper. I'm trying to pull my brush across the paper, not go through and hold my brush and hold it like I would when I'm writing. This is a different way to use the paint and the paintbrush. So I'm trying a bunch of the light versions. I do think that I got a little bit close, and we'll see. I've gone through and cut out a couple shapes here at the end, and we'll see how close they are. Notice that I mix, that I test it. When I feel like I'm kind of close, then I'll go ahead and paint it down on the paper. It is kind of what you need to do. You take a guess, then you try it out, and then you can make a better judgment once it dries. Did you get too light? Did you get too dark? Is it too cool? Is it too warm? Does it need a secondary color mixed in? If you have a purple and it's just too bright, maybe you need to add a little yellow and pull some of that intensity out. You never know. So I'm going through, trying to mix up a couple more blues here. I think I'm going for the darker blues now, and I'm painting on top of the old blues that, I thought maybe were Mitch's, but they're not. So I'll go through and try to make those matches. And if it seems like I don't have a good match, I can paint over an old one, or I can just go ahead and paint into a new square. Either way, it's fine. If I know I don't have a match, then I'll just cancel it out, try a new mix. Sometimes that can help. So I'm constantly going through, trying to check what do I have versus what I'm mixing. Trying to keep it on the paper. I get pretty tight down here at the bottom. If it helps, one thing you can do is just draw a bunch of squares with your ruler all the way across the paper, going across and up and down. That way you know where the edges are when you go to paint. I usually do it this way. It's a little bit easier, but notice that I'm not leaving big white spaces in between my mixtures. I'm keeping them tight and close together. So, you've seen the yellows and oranges from last time. Today we did some purples, some blues. Just trying to get some matches. Hopefully that kind of gives you an idea about what kind of work you need to do, things you need to think about as you go through and make your mixes. So good luck, and we'll see you in class.